Hello, everybody. It's wonderful to be here with you all. Today, I'll be walking you through the exercise I think you all spent a bit of time working on. Some of you might have seen that there's two different links for this exercise. One is in the old version of CodeSandbox, or not old, the standard, and the other one is in the new. And I wanted to show you an example of how to work through a problem like this in the new editor. I won't spend too much time talking about it, but just give you a little sample of what it looks like. This is what I spend most of my time working in. And so without further ado, let's get into FormKit. So here you can see I am on the main branch of this sample exercise. And so I think some of you, I've seen a few come in and out. If you are not added to my repository, when you click branch, you'll have an option to create a contribution branch, which is a branch that you can add back to my project or to fork a branch or fork the project to your own account. So if that's what you've chosen to do, you'll have that in your own account. Because the main branch is protected, I'm going to click branch to start working on a separate branch for the solution that I'll take you through. So it's going to spin up a preview with some logs here, if I so choose to view the logs, which I'll have here. And now let's take a look at the code itself. So here we have a Vue template that we had a few boilerplate additions made to. So you'll see that I have a few bits of commented out code. We'll be adding that in when we get to the bonus exercise for Masca. And here you'll see I also have FormKit added in at the main level. And we add the plugin here. We use it with the .use, and then we're just going to use one of the basic themes called Genesis. And we're also using some Tailwind styles. So I have a few template notes that I'll be pulling from just to make it look nice. So don't be alarmed if I randomly add in some classes that I don't describe. I just want it to look nice as we go through it. All right, so now let's jump into the file where we will do most of our coding. So I'm going to leave these comments here and just jump into this div where we will start building out the code. Now I'm going to jump ahead a little bit and add some basic scaffolding for our form here. Oops. That's not what I meant to copy over. Here we go. This is just so you don't have to watch me write too much code here. So here I have a header telling the user that we're ready to check out, as well as two different sections here, my personal info and my payment info. So I'm going to jump into a section here, and we're going to start with some of the less complicated forms, and then we'll progressively move into the other features that you all have been working on. So first we'll start with the name, and the name is starts out with a first and a last name, and I want to have these side by side. So I'm going to add a set of divs to add these to. And here, I'm going to start my form. So I'll do my first FormKit, and within this div, I am going to open up my FormKit, and I'm going to add my first name. So I'll start with my ID. I want a unique identifier for my user's name. And for that, I'll do first underscore name. And I'll add a name to this. And a placeholder. And I'll just make this caps and give it a space for it to look nice. And I want to add some validation here as well. Users do need to add their name in order to check out. So I'm going to keep this one simple, and I'm just going to make sure that this is required. So now that I've got this, you should see here that I've got a name that I can add to. Now I'm going to add a last name here. I'm just going to copy this over and change this out to be last name and last name and last name, and again, required. So here I've got maybe Tanya Smith, but if I delete this and click out of it, I should see a reminder saying that last name is required. So if I come in and add the name back, then the error message goes away. So that's the first one done. Let's move along to a second type of input, and I'm going to move this outside of this this line here, and I'm going to make this the email. So I'm going to add the type of text, and the type is really here to reference the FormKit library, and it will do its own validation on this. So there's a few different features here that we'll talk about. So type, and then I'll name a email, and then I'm going to have a label of an email, and a placeholder, and I'll do something like you@gmail.com. And now for this validation, I want it to be more than required. I want it to make sure that users are adding an actual email. So for my validation, one of the options that I have here is actually just to put required and then a line here, and then I can put email. So let's see this in practice. So I have my placeholder here, and if I put in Tanya again, it'll say, please enter a valid email address. So what it's looking for is an at and a dot. And so that should satisfy it, even though it's not going through a robust library asking to see if what's legitimate in terms of emails. But something.com works for this criteria here. All right, moving on. I want to show you the phone number, and in the form that you all, or the overview that you all saw when you were going into this, I think you saw that one of the features that you were asked to take a look at was the input mode for numeric. So you can have a type of number, and that will check to make sure that users are inputting a number, but I could, for a richer experience, actually put in text and then have an input mode of numeric, which will check to make sure that the input itself is actually number-based. So I'm going to finish this out here. And label and placeholder, just to show people what they should be emulating. Phone numbers are different in different places, but here we're going to keep this pretty simple. And this is outside of my, let's see. Oh, I see. I should move that outside my name and drop this down here. And I'm just going to quickly run a formatter on this. Okay, my formatter is not working, and I'll leave that for now. I'll run this at the end. All right, so I've got my my phone number in here, and I want to add in a few different things. The first one I want to add in is some validation. So for the validation, I would like to add some regex. And for this, I won't type the regex in front of you, but we want parentheses, 3 digits, and then 3 digits, and then 4 digits. So this is similar to our format here with our email, but instead we have matches, and then you can just type in whatever regex that you would like. The next is going to be the data mask. So this is the first bonus, and there isn't a native support for FormKit for data masking, although it is very easy to use. So if I just type in data mask, it will recognize that, and then I can type in the pattern that I want them to be reflected in the data once it's masked and read on the database somewhere else. So I'm going to make it a number, and I'm going to give it a pattern, and that pattern is going to look like a phone number. So they're not going to see the numbers, but they will see that it looks like a phone number. Now, this isn't going to work straight off the bat. We actually have to bring in a different library. So I'm going to come back over here to main.js and come in and uncomment this introductory addition with Maska. And here you can see that it's telling you what that prop will look like, which is the data mask that I just used. And then, of course, I have to import Maska as well. So now I should have both validation and data masking. And let's see if that works. So if I put in this number here, that should work just fine. If I add, well, it won't let me add additional ones, but if I take numbers off, it will give me an error message as well saying that this isn't allowed. And then if I add in any type of, or if I try to type any text, it won't let me. And that is part of the numeric input. So it's also really good for mobile. I will give you a nice screen on mobile that's just numbers, which is, we all know, a much nicer experience when you're typing something in from the phone. All right. Now I'm going to just copy this over and update this so I don't have to watch me type in all of these here. But I am going to do one of our more complicated inputs, which is going to be a select for the countries. Now, underneath the phone number, I want to have a list of countries that a user can choose from. And from that, I'm going to be pulling from the countries API that was listed in the document. So let me quickly update all of this so it is accurate and up to date. And for the placeholder, we're actually going to take this out. And we'll just make the validation required, nothing to match. And we'll take off the data masking and the input mode. And so what I want to do here is I want to bring in countries that I am going to be pulling from my API call. So just briefly, I'll show you how that will work where I add in a dynamic input. So I use my options, and then from here, I'll do something like countries.map, and then we'll come back and actually map out what that looks like. So I'll just leave that as like broken code for now and come back to that. Up here, I'm using my ref, and I'm going to bring in, I'll just come down to the bottom here, and I'm going to do a variable called countries, which I'm going to reference in that dynamic input, and I'm going to do the view ref, and that ref is going to be an empty array to start. And now I'm going to make the API call just using a simple fetch, and this should be the v3, and I'm going to pull in all of the countries. So that should look like that. And if you need to look at this, you can check out the API specs here if you want to take a look at what exactly is offered and how it'll be coming through. And to finish this, I'll do then and an async. And then I'm going to take my countries.value and then bring in my response. Now, for my list of countries, I want two things. I want to have both a, sorry, one second. I want to have both a label and I want to have a value. So coming back here, I am going to bring in my countries, just labeled as a C, and then come in here and have my label, and I'm going to do my interpolation strings with my flag because we can get a flag from the countries. So I'm just going to do c.flag, and then I'm going to do the country name. For the name, we have to do the common one because there's a few options on this API. And then down here, oh, let me finish that string so you can see that in the thing. And then the value will just be the name itself. All right. Now, let's see what I did here. Oh, it is plural options. And that should help. And looking over this, 76 by options. Look, it's probably just a syntax error here. Ah, that's it. My my quotation string. All right, now as I was reading over this, I realized I forgot the name thing. I was a little too excited to get into the form itself. I forgot to actually wrap the FormKit in FormKit. So here we go. Let's open up at the top of this div. I actually want to wrap this whole thing in FormKit. And this will be, I'll close it down below. And here I need to put in my type. So my type of form. And this gives me an automatic submit button at the bottom. And that makes sense because I don't have the closing. And there we go. So now that I have my form, you'll actually see a default submit button. And I want to add a submit handler on this. So once we do submit, we need some sort of action. I'm not going to do anything with this in the in our example here, but just for completion's sake, I'm going to add in just a little little function here saying that you'll get a console log saying that this has been submitted. And then we can bring in, we'll take the default actions and turn them to false, and then default values will pass through. So any values that are in the form are going to come through. Now I've got a bit of a recursion here. And the last thing I want to add here, just to wrap the top and the bottom, is, yeah, there we go. Well, we'll come back to the payment or like the update for the button. But I do want to show you so you can see, just if you want to like check this out as we go along. is what the value actually is here. So when I input anything, so if I do my Tanya, you'll actually see that my name and the label and the value here. Okay, now that kind of jumped around a bit. I wanted to return back to our countries and review this map. So for the map, I have my flag and my common, or my country name in the common form as my label. The value coming through is going to be just the name. So that means that when I select down, I should see the flag and the names themselves. So that seems to be working just fine. All right. Now, lastly, before we move on to the second bonus, I'll just add in another our final personal information. And it's going to be text again, but this one is going to be our postal code. And the placeholder, we'll just say postal code again. And then for the required, I do want to have this match a specific pattern, but it's not that difficult. It's just any 5 digits. And I'll close that out. And that should be the regex here for my postal code. So if I come in, and my data masking is off. Perfect. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And let me try that again. Yes, that is not an allowed value. Perfect. So it won't let me go beyond 5. And if it's anything less than 5, I'll get a notice. Now, I do want to show you an additional thing that we can do with the postal code. So for the validation, we can also put a message. And sometimes you would like to have like something a bit more custom than what you have by default. And so if it doesn't match, or if it violates this matches here, what I can do is say something specific like not just unless it's not an allowed value, but it must be 5 digits. All right, so now if I come in and switch this out, postal code is required because it's empty. And as soon as I type this in, it's not an allowed value. Let me see. It doesn't seem to be going through. I think this might be syntax error. All right, I'm going to move along, and if anyone can identify what this might be, it might be a quotation issue. We can return back to it. Yeah, it's not that one. Okay. Now, let's move on to let's move on to the payment information. Now, this one is where things get a little bit more fun, a little bit more interesting. So we have two simple text inputs, and then one slightly more complicated one. So let's start with the more complicated one, and then if we get to the simple ones, then I think you'll all be able to, if you don't, then you'll be able to fill in the gaps for yourself, because I think we have covered most of what goes into it. So for the payment information, I am going to add a FormKit to start. Nothing too crazy so far. And this one is going to have a name. And I'm just going to call this credit card, and then a label. And this one will also be a credit card number. And I'm going to give it a placeholder for now. And yeah, doesn't like my parsing of the validation message. Unterminated string. Oh, yes, that makes sense. All right, so I have a placeholder and a name. So it's not really anything. It's just a place where I can add in numbers at this point. Now, I want to make this a custom input. So what that means is I'm actually going to come in, and for my type, I am going to make this dynamic. So this type is going to be a component that I bring in. And that component name is just going to be CC input. And that doesn't mean anything just yet because we have to make it. But up top, I'm going to do a few things. I'm going to bring in from Vue. I'm going to import create input. From that FormKit. And then I'm going to import this component that we haven't made yet, but it's going to be the credit card view input view. So just going to drop that in as well. And then I'm also going to, down here with the rest of my variables, I'm going to add a variable called CC input, which you saw me write in the type. And this is going to create, we're going to use create input. And we're going to bring in this credit card. Okay, so does that relationship make sense? Where I've got my create input from Vue, I have my component I'm going to be importing, and then I have the input that is created through a create input that's ingesting the credit card component that I'm bringing in. All right, so now let's go ahead and make this. No, that makes sense because that wasn't recognizing it. Let's see. What I missed here. Credit card input, and I got my error messages, unexpected token on line 3. On line 3. Ah, here we go. That should fix it. Nice. All right, so we're starting out with a a blank component. Now in here, I'm going to just mock out a little bit of what we're trying to achieve here. So down here in the template, I'm going to add a template here. Essentially what I'm after here is I want to, in my credit card input, I would like to create an input with an icon that changes depending on what credit card it is. Now, if you read the overview, you'll see there's a hint that there's a different number for different types of credit cards. So it's really a matter of looking at the first number of the credit card number to know which one it is. So the way this works when you create your own input is that, so I'm going to have my icon here, and then I'm going to have my input. And it's just a simple HTML element, but if I put in the props that FormKit consumes, then it will read them just like I was just writing a normal FormKit component. That's essentially what I am doing, is writing my own FormKit component. So I can do stuff like input mode if I want, make this numeric because it's a credit card number. A few other things that we want to add to this is a data mask. So that kind of looks like 4 sets of 4 numbers. So, and then I'm just going to copy that over. And so that's my data mask. And then I am going to pass my value in here as props. So the value is going to, I'll work this out with you in just one second, but I'm just going to say it's props. So I'm going to be passing in the props from my main component here, and I need to set that up first. So I have up here, oh, I'm missing a few things. First, I need to import, I'll do that in a second. I'm going to bring in my props as a function. So as I handle my input, I'm going to take an event, and I'm going to consume my props dot context dot node dot input with the target dot value. And so down here, I can have I need 2 things. First, I have my input. So I can pass that back through the prop so it can be consumed by the full form. So that will look like my handle.input or handle input. And then next, I can actually add in my props. So this will be context underscore value. And I want to add in some props definitions. So up here, I'll add const props. And you can see that my define props will just be context. And context is an object. So I have my props coming through, and then I have a way of sending my input back up to the form itself. Now for the fun part. Let me see if this should be updating. Yeah, it's looking a little strange. That's why. I am missing my class. So when I add a class for FormKit, it will bring in all of the styling and the things that you would expect if I just added in a regular FormKit component. And there we go. All right, so now so I can add everything into my credit card number. I have my data masking. I know it's going to only show numbers, particularly if I'm on mobile. And it's going to pass the props in all the right directions. Now I want to have a little icon that'll show the credit card. And with Tailwind, I actually have a list of credit card types. All I have to do is pass through a string with the types in them. So I'm going to make a list of all of the different. I'm just going to delete this now. I think that's just redundant. So this is my little legend here. For this number corresponds with Amex, Visa, MasterCard, Discover, etc. And rather than write this through with you, I'm just going to paste it and talk it through with you, which is my credit card type. And I'm using computed, so I actually have to come in here and import that from Vue. And then if I come back down, all right, let's take a look at this. So essentially, I am taking a look at the number that's coming through the input, and then assigning that to value. And then I'm going to see if the first value on the number, I'm going to see what string it corresponds with, because it should always be one of these. And so given the number that it starts with, I'm going to return the text here. And then, now this is just some like general, like a mixture of some styles that I came up with ahead of time. So I've got some styling for where I want the credit card to go through. And then I have my class here where I've got my favicon brands and then my favicon credit card. And I'm just going to interpolate my string here for the credit card type that's going to be computed here with the Vue method. All right, so now that we've got that together, I'm going to give this a go. Now what I can do is I can come in and do like fake Amex numbers, and then copy this over so I don't have to come up with that every time. And then you can see that goes through. Now Amex cards are kind of funny the way that they're formatted. And then let me try a Visa. And check that out. Nice. Okay, so I've got my credit card. I've got my number. And you can see that I've got my validation coming through that this is the number that is inputted here. And now I can return back to my, nope, not that one, my form here. And this is almost done. So last, like any good credit card payment, we need more than just the card number. We need to have the security code and the expiration date. So I'm going to come back in here. I'm going to take another look at my credit card. This all looks like it's going well. And then I'm going to add a div. And sorry about the formatting, everyone. I had a prettier setup and did not get it completely ironed out before the call. I am just as annoyed as you are, I'm sure. I'm going to add flex gap. And then in here, I'll add my FormKit. And this is going to be my expiration date. So I'll just come in here and do my type of text. Name. Expire. So hopefully at this point, this is all feeling like it's getting pretty easy in terms of thinking of what goes into a FormKit component and what your options are. It helps when you type it out a number of times to fill out an exercise. And then I'll do validation, and that'll be required and matches. And this should just be I swear, not ever type regex live, but here we are. We'll see how that goes. And then my data mask, this is a lot easier to do. And then the last one, almost there, is my security code. And here I can also make sure that this is a number by typing number. And I'll just drop this in to save you all the pain. And my placeholder is going to look like just 3 little stars. And I also want to add a max length in here because I want to make sure that it's only 3. And we'll give that a look. All right. Now we're almost there. I'm going to, that's probably what my problem is. Bring this up here, and I'm going to add my submit button in here. So this button is going to say submit payment. And it should replace my default if I go ahead and add my classes. I'm going to just drop that in here. And now we've got some styles to it. And my values are not totally up to date. But I think we're a little short on time. So I can spend some time debugging this, or we can hop to questions to see how you all did, how this all tracked for you all, and go from there.
That sounds good. And we have 2 questions that I'd love to get to real quick. And maybe there is still some time for you to debug. All right, let's see. Thank you for that, by the way. Like, it was super nice to follow along, and it's so great to be able to watch over someone's shoulder, right? Like, it's like pair programming without all of the hassle on my side. So that's really good. All right, awesome. Let's get to some of the questions. This one is cool. Are there any other form libraries for Vue that you'd like to use, or that you've used and can recommend as well?
I unfortunately can't. I'm actually relatively new to Vue myself, and am not completely versed in the world of libraries with these forms. But I have been doing a lot of reading on the FormKit, and they've done a number of updates to make sure that it has a much more robust set. So like we went with a pretty simple form just to get you started, but there's a lot more tools in the recent edition that will allow you to do a lot more complex features, and particularly around performance savings when you have like a bunch of, if you have a big form, for example. So just like a few notes about why FormKit, but yeah, unfortunately, I can't direct you anywhere else at this time.
That's totally fine. And actually, you're almost already answering another question that we got, which is, are there any other features like the performance thing from FormKit that you wish you had time to dive into here, but like is worth at least pointing out for people to go on the internet and learn more about?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the customizability of the different components, we really just hit the tip of the iceberg. All of what you have in FormKit is really extensible. And so you can create any kind of input or like form layout. Nesting is something that they made really, really easy. And then something that I really like about working with FormKit within Vue is just the use of props, and how simple it is to kind of that and reverse that through different layers of forms. And as you probably know, once you start making a form, it's very rarely just a very isolated form. It's usually a larger structure. And so I would highlight that as one of the main perks that I got excited about as I was getting ready for this, is something that, like, anytime I have a complex form, this is kind of going to be my go-to.
Super. That's very interesting. We just had a new question pop in. I love it when that happens. This person says, I know FormKit will have a pro option with synthetic inputs. Can you tell us about that at all?
Not in detail. I only read briefly about it. I think I probably referenced you to the documentation, or there was a video that I found that would probably go into like more accurate descriptions of exactly how you would want to use that.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, people need to check it out on their own time. Real quick one before we start wrapping up, because we're already sort of like running over time, but it's been fun, so whatever. We're just roll with it. People would love to know what it's like to work at CodeSandbox.
Oh, well, that one's an easy one. Yeah, we are working on a lot of very cool problems. It's kind of like a very fun environment because we're all developers trying to create a developer environment that we want. And so there's a lot of engineers and designers that are all developers sitting around trying to figure out what we could be doing next. And so this was like a little glimpse into like what versions we're coming up with in the future. But I would say if I were to like describe it in one way, it's incredibly collaborative. And we want people to have fun while they code. And I think we do that as well at work, where there's a lot of playtime and discovery that we try to integrate into like the different ideas we have on our horizon. So I'll keep it short and leave it to that.
No, it sounds good. I think it's always great if you can work on, like a problem that you're having yourself, right? Like something that you make for yourself is also really kind of interesting. Well, awesome. Thanks again. Thanks for answering some of the questions. And we're going to the wrap up. So
awesome.
have a great rest
thank you
of your
for having
day.
me.
Absolutely.